We're trying to create the Carfax for solar, or what we call the SolarFax. If you think about it, you wouldn't buy a car just based on the mileage of the car. You probably walk around the car, you want to see maintenance records, you want to see how the car looks like on the outside and the inside. So similarly, we used to buy a lot of projects based on performance data only. And that layer of information for field data, we had to collect very quickly on site. I realized how important the layer of information was. And that's the problem that we're trying to tackle.
Welcome to the Peñalva Climbing Gym. Today, we are going to tackle multiple problems, not the least of which is the business startup of fixing solar projects. And the two gentlemen to my left, your right, know a thing or three about really digging in and ascertaining how to optimize not just solar, but storage, and have a deep and broadscape understanding of how the solar industry, the battery storage industry, took shape and will continue to. David Penalva and James Nagel are joining us today on SunCast as the co-founders of HelioVolta. It's good to see you guys.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, man.
This is awesome. I'm glad we're recording this.
So am I. And the sooner we get done with the interview, the sooner we get to climb.
Yeah.
We'll get into some of your lifelong passions in a moment. If you're new to SunCast, we every week dive in to the founders on the front lines of the clean energy transition, developing products or services that are changing the way we generate, consume, transmit, and transmute electricity for the improvement of our lives. We've got more than 666 episodes now in the back catalog, and it is my true pleasure and desire to be able to help you harness the things that entrepreneurs like David and James have learned in the pattern matching of life, of business, and of entrepreneurship, so that you can approach your job and your career, maybe with them, maybe in a similar startup, with equal fervor and passion, but with fewer mistakes. Let's be honest. If you like this kind of conversation, then I hope you, like David, will dig into numerous episodes of our back catalog as we've featured hundreds of solar warriors, as we call them, climate champions. You can find out more at mysuncast.com or whatever app you happen to be listening or watching on. We do not have the entire back catalog yet on YouTube, so if you're on YouTube, please go to mysuncast.com. I apologize in advance that the search functionality is lacking, as David has told me numerous times. Guys, I think that one of the aspects that stands out for me is as entrepreneurs, you have to decide what to work on, right? So we can go all into your backstory, and we'll talk a bit about how and why you got into the solar industry. But you all met while working with another podcast, SunCast friend, Andy Klump, over at CEA. Both took departure from CEA during the pandemic. And while as many of us were holed up in your house, started mulling over ideas for what to do next. Could you walk me through a little bit? James, I'd love to hear your perspective first, since you're holding the microphone, on the early stages of conversation between you and David about what a business could look like, what a product might be worthy of your attention and time.
Yeah. So I think one of the really interesting things about working for a company like CEA is you have such an exposure to the market. You really understand the pain points that the market is seeing, not just one company or two companies, but really what's some of the things plaguing it. And so we played with a few different ideas of maybe targeting energy storage or really dialing in some energy modeling stuff. But through a lot of root cause analyses, lawsuits, this type of stuff, there was a big need for really dialing in the field work and quality on site and the actual projects themselves.
Projects so the construction of solar projects, large scale predominantly.
Exactly. The products are fundamentally safe when you build them correctly with high quality and you maintain them really well. But we're pushed towards really reducing those costs pretty significantly, that forces people to cut corners.
Mm-hmm.
And so we found that there was a big inflection point where, if you cut costs so much, those pennies saved turned into fortune lost.
Yeah.
Where the cost to actually remediate, the cost of lawsuits, the cost to your brand really take an incredible toll and is just not worth it. And so how do you meet that need while providing a value to the industry is what we really tried to tackle.
Yeah. David, you've been in the industry for maybe, I think, a decade longer than James, and have multiple entrepreneurial endeavors. Been at SunEdison, you've been at Silicon, you've seen the industry rise and fall, you've seen software come and go. How, as you stepped away from this role, as James pointed, that gave you such a macro view on the market, do you think about distilling that decades of knowledge into a product that you could bring to market?
That is exactly how we thought about it. So if you think about what methods of leverage you have as a person, you can leverage your time, you can leverage other people's time, or you can use software to leverage. And I think for us, when we were thinking, okay, how can we apply what we learned? The biggest leverage that we had was developing software, because once you develop a tool once, it works for a lot of people. It's exponentially, could exponentially be used by a lot of people. And that was what kind of when we were thinking about ideas, like, okay, what is the best way to leverage our knowledge? How can we help the industry to move forward? How can we have the biggest impact? And that was through software.
Software. Yeah, I love that you point out leverage as well. Naval Ravikant talks about the 4 areas of leverage, right? People, capital, software, and content. So today we're going to talk about 2 of those 4 pieces of leverage. Hopefully, as HelioVolta scales, you'll be able to leverage the third as well, people. But with that software, you can get a lot more leverage. So you all were on SunCast almost a year and a half ago now, right? And it was because you entered into the Solar Prize, the Made in America Solar Prize, and you won. We featured at a time that you won. I'd like to, before we dig into sort of the various veins that we could mine here, I'd like to understand from the point of winning American-made Solar Prize to now, what as a company do you feel like you've most grown through doing?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to thank one person that actually encouraged us to apply to the American-made talents. That was Paul Wormser.
Oh, Paul. Yes.
He is the one that kind of brought it up. It's like, hey, the deadline is coming up. You guys should apply. Yeah. What you're working on is kind of really cool. And we never even thought about it. It's like, okay, we applied. I think timing was also right because we were kind of already developing the software at the time that the contest was going. And since then, it's been incredible. I think we got a lot of media attention and being recognized as what you're doing being something cool that people actually are interested in.
Yeah.
Brought us a lot of open a lot of doors for conversations, and that translated into, signing some contracts and kind of getting to work with more clients and so on. So it's been a very exciting year for sure.
Yeah. James, is there anything with regards to access to the national labs or the mentorship through that program that on the technical side really took the platform to a new level?
Yeah, absolutely. So after winning the prize, we had a $75,000 voucher that we could use with national labs. And so it was kind of a tricky play because the national labs, if they were going to develop code for you, well, then the national labs owned part of the code. So it was kind of this tricky thing. So we actually had a great opportunity there to actually do a pretty in-depth cybersecurity check on us. So like Sandia National Labs, the nuclear security group from the IT, really did all these tests on our software.
Oh, how cool!
Yeah, it was.
It's like the equivalent of a software bankability study.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and so it actually it helped us out a lot, not only in improving our software, but also giving us more credibility. And so we were able to sign more contracts and get through some of the onboarding there because we had gone through that. So that was really fantastic. It also opened us up to that whole scene. And so of government grants and this type of stuff. And so kind of like Paul encouraged us to apply to the American Made Prize. Somebody else was like, small business innovation research grants. You should jump into that. And so we did, and we were awarded a DOE grant for
fantastic.
that as well.
I didn't know that. How much?
Yeah. $200K to start.
Okay.
So that's
so you're phase one.
Phase one, exactly. And then phase two will be 1.1. And so, we were able to hire somebody that we met through the American Made Challenge.
Okay. As an employee.
As an employee, yeah.
How cool.
So yeah.
Shout out. Who was that employee?
Yeah, AJ Rossman,
Nice.
founder of Draker.
Yeah.
I worked for Meridian for a while.
Incredible.
Obviously.
You hired AJ. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
How does that feel? The founder of one of the companies that you guys admire, right? Like,
yeah, AJ's been awesome. And so just like kind of opening up that network and like really leaning into it, getting into that mentorship too, was incredibly valuable. And there's so much out there that you don't realize, and you can that's accessible to you.
I want to circle back around. There are doubtless folks who still don't understand why I'm talking with you and what we're going to talk about today. David, how do you explain in simple terms the problem? James enunciated a bit in the beginning, but the problem that you set out to solve.
What we realized is that the industry was not sophisticated enough, and there was a layer of information that was getting lost. In the weeds, and that was all the field work data. So just to give you an analogy that how I like to explain to my friends, we're trying to create the Carfax for solar, or what we call the SolarFacts. If you think about it, you wouldn't buy a car just based on the mileage of the car. Right. Wouldn't? Like you probably walk around the car, you want to see, maintenance records, you want to see, how the car looks like on the outside and the inside. Yeah. So similarly, when I was working at San Edison, we used to buy a lot of projects, and that was a lot of based on performance data only. Right. And that layer of information for field data, we had to collect very quickly on site. And then later on in my career, seeing a lot of the incidents out there with some thermal events and so on, I realized like how important the layer of information was. And that's the problem that we're trying to tackle. And let me even step back a little bit more. The problem goes beyond just, that aspect of just data. It actually is something that I'm very passionate about because it touches my career. I developed my professional career to the solar industry, right? Like that's what I picked as an engineer. It's like, hey, I want to fight this fight, and I want to put it all. And when I see that there is an incident that can cause a damage to property or personnel, and the reason for that is the lack of information and data that has been collected on the background, it really bothers me. And the bad press of seeing a fire in the news, it puts a bad press. People don't want to have solar on the roofs just because they get the sense that it's, unsafe. And that's not true. It's a very safe technology. Of course, when you're growing an industry and we have a bunch of people jumping into the wagon, there's a lot of qualifications and, rushing through processes and lack of documentation, lack of process procedures. And not to blame it on people. I don't think people is the root cause of this problem. But how we enable the people that work in the field to do their work more,
Yeah, the processes themselves are lacking. James, one of the things that we talked about often in our conversations around trying to better understand the makeup of sort of how you guys came together is the early work that you did in EDF. I think it was your first kind of real big boy job, right? Could you talk a bit about some of the lessons learned taking that first real job at EDF, and maybe characterize where in EDF you worked and how that came together, but sort of that attention to detail with a macro scope on the industry that you were given there?
No, I really appreciated working at EDF. It was a great launch pad. It's called Nexco when I joined. And so getting that experience was fantastic. I was on the solar engineering team. So we would take it from greenfield and bring it through into project construction, doing all the preliminary designs, all the energy modeling, and it had to be really dialed in.
Yeah.
And so it really...
What do you mean really dialed in?
Yeah, like plus or minus 0.1% is like what you really needed to get down to. And like really, because there's so much money on the line, right? And so, 0.1% change in the financial model moves the bar pretty significantly. And so each of the energy model inputs had to be defensible. Each of the decisions with the design had to be defensible. So
in your 20s, you're learning to turn the knobs and levers to make sure that the pro forma speaks to the actuals of a project before it's ever built.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
And so really dialing that in and then getting the full picture and working at that kind of developer, seeing how that one energy model then affects the entire project itself.
Right.
And so also not just working on one individual aspect of that project, but seeing it through, right, gives you that deep understanding of how a project is built.
Yep.
So I really, really appreciated that at EDF.
Given that you had an opportunity, as David did, to work at a big company, like a macro level, and now at a startup, I wonder if you have a thought around how that macro look at the industry, both at EDF and SunEdison, even Silicon prior to that, and then at CEA, seeing the root cause problems that the industry was facing, how that helped you filter through the good versus maybe not so good ideas that you could have started. And I can only imagine, coming out of such an amazing organization as Clean Energy Associates, you had no lack of opportunity of folks asking you, please consult with me, please help me with this or that, problems coming left and right at you that you could intellectually solve.
Right. Yeah. And so with EDF, right, you're serving, like as an engineer, you have one client. You're really going deep on that one.
Right.
And with the CEA, you're a smaller team, a little more tight knit. You get to know people like really intimately, and then you have access to an entire industry. And so, going to Intersolar or RE Plus or SPI at the time, with Andy, walking meeting everybody, right? It's an incredible experience. And so in those types of scenarios, you really get to understand, and you're not getting the EDF depth, but you're getting a crazy breadth.
Yeah, the pattern matching
experience. You get a lot of pattern matching. And so, what are people hiring me for? What are the pain points that they're seeing? What's the value I'm actually adding? And what's recurring? The pattern matching. And so that was incredibly valuable to say, I could go and do a deep dive on sub-hourly clipping losses and build a cool tool and license it, but is there a proper market for it? Is there a real pain point in the industry that I can uniquely solve?
Yeah.
Maybe not.
So as you two started to put your heads together, David, I'd love to hear, what did you say no to?
Oh, I have a lot of big problem with shiny object chasing. So a lot of ideas. I had probably folders and folders of ideas over many, many years. Do you want to know like a specific one, or do you want to like?
I'm curious, like what made it to the near finish line, right? If this is Mario Kart, like what
I love electroluminescence technology. I think that's really cool. I was interested on doing something related to that. I think it's just a very cool technology that is not that widely used, and I thought that that was gonna grow over time. It's a big opportunity.
Checking hotspots and things like that.
Yeah, micro cracks on defects on stuff related to warranty claims and so.
Okay,
it's just an interesting topic. And then we explore other ideas with regards to software for storage. A lot of different tools that were kind of very, very specific, built on top of PVSys. Because PVSys, everyone complains about it, but there's no alternative. There's some players trying to make it as an alternative. But so those are some of the other ideas. But again, it's not for the lack of ideas.
Yeah.
It's always something that I'm kind of think that is a good idea that we can chase.
I asked the question because it's not often what we say yes to, but what we say no to that determines as entrepreneurs what gets to live or die. And, you mentioned the sort of shiny object syndrome. I raise my hand as one who suffers from it. But I'd love to hear a little bit more around the way that you analyzed the market for a service that you knew you could bring, or believed at least that you could create software around. We were laughing earlier that I'm getting paid to effectively make movies and I have no movie making experience whatsoever. And James said, yeah, like me, I have no software making experience, but we get paid to build software. And we are able to step into domains with less relative experience because we have the deep core experience, right? Like I can carry a conversation about this topic quite well. And if I can find someone to manage the camera, like you can find someone to manage the code, then we can direct the product in the right area, right? How did you guys think about determining, is there a real product need? What solutions exist today? Is the timing right for the solution we believe we can bring to market? How did you unpack that?
We did, a very rational MVP style type of approach to each of the ideas. So we'll analyze the market, market size, trends. We have an inside knowledge about the industry, so we kind of know. Within the areas of expertise, there are some ideas that we had more expertise on, and we also flirt with a lot of different tools that were out there.
Right.
So for field work, we just tried a bunch of them, when we were at CEA. Before then, when I was at Sun Edison, we had a lot of trouble. I remember using a random app for doing audits. That was a real problem that we were facing. How scalable was that? Is this a real market opportunity? We had to interview a ton of people. We talked to a lot of companies. We talked to a lot of field technicians. We were trying to understand, are those real pains? Are they using software for these?
So 2 questions. How did you go about conducting the interview, and how did you create the list of who you would interview?
So when we looked at the landscape of opportunity, we were thinking, okay, do we want to get into residential? Do we want to tackle the problem from the residential perspective, the utility scale, or the C&I space? Right. Broke down in different segments. So we decided utility and C&I is probably the best to start with. And then we looked at different options, but the bottom line was the field technician. The field technician, because then you have the segment of types of companies. You can now talk to companies that are doing, O&M, or companies that are doing EPC, or companies that are asset owners, or companies that are doing,
who's the real buyer?
Third-party services. We realized that, third parties were coming from a third-party perspective. There were not that many companies. There are maybe 20 in the US. Like if you build a software for 20 companies, this is not gonna work, right? So even if your idea is good, you really need to think about the broader, bigger market. So that was EPCs or O&Ms. So we talk to a lot of different field technicians that were doing construction and understanding. Do you guys use any tools? How do you guys do QA/QC? Right. What do you use? Do you use Excel? Do you use a specific software? And then what is working and what was not working? A lot of technicians gave us a lot of feedback on the tools they were using. They were being forced to use by the companies, but they were not very happy about. Yeah. So understanding what were the pain points from those users was key, and that took us a while. And then you go build the MVP. This is a classic stuff. Like really build something that it's just barely holding. It really doesn't work great. Yeah. You can show it to people. It kind of works fine. Then it crashes through the demo, but that's the way you get started. And then you get feedback. It's like, oh, that's cool. And people start giving you really good feedback. It's like, okay, then I guess we won't build. Like we had a bunch of ideas with regards to features. Yeah. And you need to kind of decide what you want to do and really focus on solving one problem first. And for us, the first problem that we tackle was how can you automate the work that they do in the field to automate the reporting? I think that was the first step.
Reporting, and what are they reporting on?
What are they reporting on? The open
question,
task.
what is it that they're reporting?
So they're reporting on, if you're an O&M company, you are doing preventive maintenance work. You have to give some type of written report to someone, to the company that hired you to do that work, that says what you did and how you.
So they go collect data, they go
this
back
problem.
to the job trailer or the hotel or later.
Later in the day, typically they will be sitting in the car writing an email. It's an email format. It's kind of not really great. It's not very professional. So how can you automate that process to make something that is professional, that doesn't really take a lot of time from their side, and is very intuitive and they want to use? Because field technicians, they just are very picky of what they use in the field. It really is harsh out there.
Yeah.
You're in the field, it's rough conditions.
You could have picked anyone to be your partner. What does
a very easy question.
what
Very, very easy question.
What, not why did you pick James, but what does James do better than you or virtually anyone else you could have picked?
Picking a partner is like getting married, for sure. So I could answer the same question about my wife. I think James brings something to the table that is incredible. He's emotionally stable.
Yeah?
I'm not. So
I need a partner like James.
He's just constant, like really steady work. He's very smart, and he's a good person.
Yeah.
That's really, he checked all the boxes. Like, okay, well, I don't know what I'm gonna do, but whatever, we'll figure it out.
Yeah, helps that he was your first hire at CEA as well. Right?
Yeah, we kind of got.
How many years to work together?
Almost 6.
Since 2015.
6 years. All right, James.
Same question.
Same question. You could have gone to work anywhere. You could have partnered with anybody. You didn't have to take this bozo along with you.
Yeah. No, I didn't. No, I'm just kidding. No, I mean, it's just really complementary personalities.
Yeah.
There's David's a nuclear reactor. David has an infinite depth of energy to him that is hard to find, right? And so, that kind of drive is rare. And, paired with, my, more constant sensibilities, works really well. I would say that you also have a constant, but it's like energy drive of like, David, you haven't slept in a while. How are you still going? One of these. So, but also obviously like really sharp. And
so mid-pandemic, you're in Seattle. He's down here in Southern California. You guys are on the phone more than once a day, I imagine. How did you start to rationalize not just the concept, but who does what? What skill sets are necessary? Who's going to lean into one side versus the other?
Yeah, really good question. And initially, we didn't really have a good handle on that.
Yeah.
It was everybody does everything. When it was just the two of us and we had a whole company to run, okay, we have a task list. Let's just divide and conquer.
Even still, on that task list, you're choosing based on parameters, who thinks he can get it done faster, which is more aligned with your skill set. Right. Where did you start to see tasks falling into a sense of order?
Yeah, and that's kind of where we've landed now. So you can kind of see the seed of that earlier on, in terms of just kind of a sale and a product, and that's kind of where we've landed pretty well.
So you're more on the commercial side of the product.
Oh, I guess I did my inflections the wrong way. Product and sales.
Okay, there you go. I was fascinated. I was like, wow, I sort of had David pegged as the commercialization side of the business. And what makes you the right fit for the product of sort of bringing this product to life?
Yeah, I think that just understanding the core need, just that empathy with the end user, and like understanding, because I have some coding in my background and have a general sense of like, how should this be structured and how do we get to here from here to there? And so that's been pretty helpful, and like really listening to those end users and like thinking about how do we meet that need.
We've talked a bit about process, and in fact, the core product of HelioVolta is SolarGrade, which builds on process and really aims to automate and reduce error in the field, in reporting, so that these assets can be graded, they can be qualified. And I was going to get into it earlier, but you mentioned with SunEdison, right? You were acquiring projects that, had they had a Carfax, you would have known you were getting something closer to a lemon than what was sold to you, right? So I think it's really interesting this concept is something that exists in other markets from a commercialization perspective. And you introduced me to both a lot of books and podcasts. How did you start to think about building analogies that the marketplace would understand around a product that didn't exist yet and needed to be sold?
It is still a learning curve
Yeah.
for me. I have an engineering background, and I always flirted with sales
Yep.
and business development, but I'm still learning on SaaS sales, like software sales, is
Yeah.
very difficult and
Yeah.
very different to other types of sales. So I've been reading a lot and kind of just doing a huge learning curve on how to actually sell, how do you prove value to clients.
Yeah. Did you all go through exercises around identifying product market fit, and also in that same vein, who in your overarching ecosystem helped you really refine your thinking around product market fit?
Yeah, we had a few mentors, like, friends and friends of friends that you ask for advice, and they all of a sudden they're super excited and to help you. So there are a few people that helped. I have a good relationship with Paul Grant as well, with Helioscope, and I will call him and ask him for advice and kind of tell him a little bit more of what we're working on, and he will give me his perspective, and that has been extremely helpful.
Yep.
Also Alejo Lopez, with Nextracker. He lives down the street. He's a really good friend of mine. I worked with him back in the day at Silicon, and still really well connected. And it's just people helping you out and really asking you the tough questions to understand do you have product market fit? Are you there? And after reading a lot of books, I like the analogy of the big stone that you're pushing up the hill. That's how it feels when you're working on a startup. Like every day, it's like, okay, is this working? Is this really worth it? Like, are we getting traction? What's going on? Like, you might get a little bit of traction, but you really don't know. And then you go on a low for a little while, and it's like, doesn't really feel great. And all of a sudden, kind of the boulder starts moving forward. And I'm like, oh, hold on, let me stop it. We're not ready for this. We're not ready. So that's where I kind of want to give the the analogy of product market fit. You feel that it's like, okay, now this is the moment that we're looking for. Now it's happening. Like we're getting feedback. People are seeing this software being a useful tool for them. It's adding value to them. So
James, do you remember the first time you felt like you'd figured out what product market fit looked like for SolarGrade?
Yeah, I mean, it was just that. It was just wow. I didn't realize we were here, and we need to be more ready than we are right now.
But what were some of the characteristics from either conversations with customers or data on your dashboard that suggested, oh, product market fit looks like this?
Yeah, and I think so one of the books that we both read that was really helpful was The Mom Test.
The Mom Test.
The Mom Test.
Okay.
You familiar with this?
No.
Highly recommend.
Does it have to do with
quick read?
Does it have to do with baked goods?
I wish.
Okay.
No, the premise is, how do you tell if you have a good product when everybody's lying to you?
This isn't a joke.
It
sounds like a setup for a joke.
I've got plenty of jokes, but this is
How do you tell
if you have a good product when everybody's lying to you? So you make an app, you show it to your mom. She's going to tell you, "I love it. You did a great job with this." You go out, you quit your job, you do all this stuff, and you have a terrible product.
It's called the Mom Test.
It's called the Mom Test.
Okay, I'm going to get this.
It's fantastic. It's like 80 pages.
Everybody on the SunCast team, go get the book.
It's well worth it.
All right.
But and you'll probably see some of these themes where unless somebody's committing time, their reputation, or actual money, then there's no market signal.
Yeah.
And so once, because a lot of people are like, I've been looking for this tool forever. I'm in. Let's go.
Yes.
Let's go.
Right. And especially when the threshold is relatively low where software is, right? The threshold for saying yes and taking a trial is relatively low. And they may just not give you feedback.
Right.
They could just keep on doing business as usual. Okay.
Right. And so then when we really had those market signals, where somebody was telling their CEO, we need this tool, putting their reputation up there.
Okay. Yes.
When they're actually committing to contracts and those contracts are growing. They're starting with 10 users. They're bumping it up to 20,
Right.
30.
Mm-hmm.
That's the actual market signal where you're like, okay, now this is actually meaningful.
Yeah. David, where did you grow up?
Grew up in Spain, Valencia. Yeah.
Valencia is the
Beautiful city.
The football team that I cheer for.
Where the paella and the
when I cheer for the European football teams, I cheer for Valencia, mainly because when I went to study in Madrid in 2001, the Valencia team was very good.
Oh, okay.
We got to go that far back.
Yes.
Sorry to say.
I'm not very into soccer, but yes.
So what most of us in this sort of OGs in the industry know that maybe some of our viewers don't is Valencia and Spain in general, but Valencia as a part of Spain is kind of I would say like the heartbeat of when there was a really thriving solar market. It was Valencia. It was like everything circled around that part of Spain. If not directly in Valencia, then that whole like region.
Still to this day, we have Power Electronics.
The largest companies.
They are, I mean, very close to my hometown.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. So we had a Terza, BP Solar, Isophoton, and Silicon back in the day in a major, like when Spain was a big deal in solar, right after Germany, and the two of the three largest companies were in Valencia, and that's how I got into solar.
Yeah,
working for one of these manufacturers.
What were you doing before Silicon?
Before Silicon, I worked for a small installation company, but I think more interesting to that is that I actually did my final thesis when I was in college about how to manufacture solar models from ultra pure silicon. That's really what got me into solar.
Why were you studying?
I thought that it was very interesting.
What were you studying at the time? You were getting a master's in electrical engineering?
I was doing industrial engineering, which is a master's degree. And at the time, I was kind of thinking. So I did the specialization of construction. Yeah. It was kind of booming construction, but I really got super excited the last year in renewables, and that's when my first idea was I want to set up a company to do a solar company. And I went to the Institute of Ideas, which is the entrepreneurship institute within the university, right? And they help you to build a business plan. And that summer, I decided to kind of work for a company to try to see how it just to learn about solar as much as I could that summer.
What time frame? What year is this?
Oh, I don't know. Forgot.
03, 04?
Yeah, it's been a while. Very bad.
I'm gonna consult LinkedIn, but while you keep telling.
Yeah. So I at that time I decided to kind of go that route and get into working on this thesis and learn a lot about the manufacturing process. And that's what got me into silicon right after that.
Yeah, because the Spain boom was kind of 03 to 2010, right?
09 or 10. Yeah.
Okay.
2010, yeah.
Yeah, right around there. That's I remember when everyone, like the Powerlight folks, were in Germany and then Spain and then back in the US. It was like, wow, you're back already. And it was about the time I was going into Latin America. And the very year that I went into Latin America, it was just like flooded with all the Spaniards. There was
really
no
spread
work.
out everywhere.
Yeah, there was no work in Spain. Now they're all back.
They're all back, and now it's kind of booming and busting again.
Yeah. So there will invariably be back out into the market. You studied engineering as an undergrad. Did you always think that you were going to be an engineer? Were you a tinkerer as a kid?
I wanted to be a mechanic.
A mechanic?
Yeah, car mechanic.
Something else you guys have in common.
Yeah, I did a lot of just working on my car and motorbike when I was growing up, and I was good at studying. So now, when I asked someone, it's like, hey, what should I study? They told me engineering is kind of a next level to a mechanic. So I got very disappointed after 5 years in engineering, because the final, I think when I was ending the degree, that's the first time that we went to the lab and actually opened an engine. Yeah. And I'm like, guys, I've been doing this since I was 14. What are you guys talking about? No one really understood anything about the real engine. So that kind of made me not to lean towards
Yeah.
being like getting on the more of the engines and mechanical engineering side of things.
Okay. James, I have to wonder, when your parents found out that their once NASA intern was going to be moving to an off-grid village in the middle of nowhere, what was the message like? What was that phone call like?
Yeah, no, it was pretty supportive. They're pretty, yeah, get out of here, right? No, no, the village had been in our kind of our radar for a long time.
Okay.
It's a wilderness retreat center.
Yeah.
And college professors will go teach there on
Okay.
any number of things:
Yeah.
theology, philosophy, climate change, music theory, over the summers, and that's what attracts people. And it's this old copper mining town.
Yeah.
That's run fully on hydro,
Mhm.
and they have all their own water. And
That's amazing. And you were the mechanic.
I was a mechanic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so actually similar to David, he grew up tinkering and then went to school for it.
Yeah.
I kind of went to school for it and then started
got to
tinkering.
tinker.
Yeah. And it was a fantastic experience there. You're living off the grid, or, it has its own microgrid. So you really start to understand power dynamics right there at a pretty intimate level, right? So like somebody
Is that run of river hydro, I guess?
No, it's a
They have a
gravity.
Okay.
Yeah. But we're trying to build another one. So that's another story.
Yeah.
But yeah. And so just getting my hands dirty was extremely valuable, and would be valuable in the future, as, I was fixing all these bulldozers and also running them. And so when you get to project sites and you're talking to folks that are running that, you're not just some engineer who doesn't have any dirt under their fingernails.
I can see for you, James, a through line of engineering, but even when we talked the other day about your getting into EDF, you didn't really want to be on the solar side of the business. And I thought that was really funny because you went into a Nexco, and like EDF is this huge wind company, and they kind of stuck you in the solar team. I'm wondering, when was your first actual exposure to solar? Was it before EDF?
Yeah, so it would have been with Engineers Without Borders in Kenya, working on some off-grid projects there, providing water for a village out there.
Okay.
And so that really got me into appropriate technologies. We were building solar farms there. We were building play pumps, which are merry-go-rounds where kids will play on it and it'll pump water for a village.
Yeah.
So that kind of appropriate technology, and just using your creativity in a practical sense to do good. And so that altruism kind of carried forward into engineering as well, of like, how can my effect with the engineering work that I do be a positive force for environmental stewardship? Has
environmental stewardship always been something that called to you as a part of your profession? And how was it integrated into your family unit as a kid?
Anytime I could spend outside was a time well spent.
Yeah.
In fact, when I started in college, I started as a civil engineer because I thought you could spend more time outside.
Oh, wow.
It wasn't actually a good fit for me. Mechanical is a way better fit. But it was just so integral. Just like being outside just really felt right.
Were you raised in the Pacific Northwest?
I was raised on the East Coast.
No way.
I was born in Connecticut and we grew up in New York.
Okay.
And
small family, big family?
Older brother.
Yeah.
And both parents.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty small. And
family of entrepreneurs, family of engineers?
Family of teachers. Yeah.
Teachers. Okay.
So my mom's a fantastic teacher and incredibly creative. And my dad has a long, he's a teacher now, but he was a business
person
for a long time. Worked for International Paper, kind of these big corporates, but then he also started his own brewery for a few years, which is really cool. So it's kind of cool to see that and say, yeah, it didn't work out, but that was a really cool thing to like take
it takes
risk.
Courage.
Yeah, exactly. So that was exciting from like a risk-taking perspective right there.
Was your old man proud of you for stepping out on your own, start a business?
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. And each of these different like steps, he was really supportive. He would say like, it's not something I would have done.
Yeah.
Go to work as a mechanic right out of college,
Yep.
or go leave an awesome job at EDF to go be a dirtbag and through hike the PCT, right?
That's how you characterize it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Well, I mean, while we're on it, what got into your mind as a 20-something to leave an awesome job and go for 7 months as a dirtbag walking the trails of the Pacific Coast Trail?
Yeah, no, it kind of always been in the back of my head.
Yeah.
I'd gotten lost hiking in the Northwest at one point, stumbled on the PCT, and I was like, I found somebody there.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I'm super lost. Can I look at a map with you? And he was like, yeah, you're not where you think you are.
Oh, yeah.
You need to turn around and go back. But he was a PCT through hiker,
Yeah.
so it kind of got in the back of my head for a bucket list thing to do. And so at EDF, I was like, I have the ability right now, and I don't have a lot of the strings attached.
Yeah.
And so I just kind of saw that opportunity and just kind of jumped at it.
Did you solve for, I need to work X more days before I can go hike?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a little bit tied to a bonus, and like my it's not a job that you're going to give a 2 weeks notice and jump.
No.
So, kind of waiting for the bonus, but I kept getting delayed. And my boss was super cool about it. And I was like, hey, I'm going to do this thing. I don't want to leave you in a lurch.
Yeah.
And they were really good about honoring that. And that carried me through that year.
That's amazing.
Because you can, once you pare down pretty significantly, it's not that hard to survive in this country. And so like you can live off of very little.
Before I jump to W, any particular story from the Pacific Coast Trail that stands out to you? It's like a lifetime memory you'll teach your children.
Yeah, I think that, the Pacific Crest Trail really taught me that, you're carrying more than you need. And then also you are what you eat. But I kind of extended that to you are what you consume.
Yeah, or what you listen to.
Or what you listen. Exactly that. No, exactly that. And so you are the conversations that you have.
Yeah.
You are the people that you surround yourself with. You are the food that you eat also.
Yeah.
And so, there's a million different lessons.
You carry more than you need.
Yeah.
That's a deep one.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's a very physical reality, but that's very metaphysical as well, huh?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, every ounce counts, all that type of stuff. You drop your extra shirt because it's an extra thing that's just going to get dirty anyway. But then, you're just constantly, what are you holding with you?
Yeah. In this marriage that you all have in business, I enjoy seeing how aligned you are in your extracurricular activities too, right? Your love of outdoors, your climbing, just all the ways that I see the similarities of how you grew up, how you think about your endeavors. What about you, David? Any tangents or dead ends or just sort of work experiences that upon reflection actually were additive, but maybe in the moment you thought were a wrong choice?
The one that really shaped me, that I always go back to, it's like why I'm here and why I had all these opportunities, is I grew up in it's difficult to classify yourself middle class. It's easy to say middle class, but it really doesn't have a great definition. Definitely less opportunities than others that I was surrounded with.
Sure.
I didn't have the opportunity to do Erasmus, which is what everyone does in Europe to learn another language.
Yeah.
You're in Europe. You need to speak a bunch of different languages.
Can you explain Erasmus for folks that don't know?
Yeah. So Erasmus is a program where you have the option to go abroad for a year, usually within Europe, and you just spend a year there, and they you can study there for a year, and that counts for your degree as a full year. So that's a great experience, but the reality is that the program only subsidizes you with a little bit of money.
Right.
And you have to have support.
Yeah.
So there's some people that will go abroad and they have their family paying for part of the Erasmus. I didn't have that option, and I didn't want to kind of go and just work 3 jobs while studying, like making a miserable type of situation.
Yeah.
So I thought, okay, I'll do my degree here, but the problem is that I didn't know how to, I came from fairly normal middle school and high school, not very good English when I was studying. So my English really sucked. It was really bad to the point that I was like, I need to learn English. So I finished college, and with my degree in my pocket, I went to the UK, everyone from my university was working on a bunch of different jobs. Everyone was kind of making a ton of money.
Yeah.
And I was just washing dishes as a kitchen porter in Bristol.
Wow.
I think I was there almost for 6 months. Couldn't even talk to anyone. It was rough.
Miserable.
You know how it feels? It feels that it's incredible, like what not knowing a language will do to you. Because even though I thought about myself as someone kind of smart with education, I couldn't communicate. And I was just washing dishes thinking, what am I doing here? I was painting single line diagrams about solar stuff that I wanted to work on.
Yeah.
And that, you won't believe it, that triggered everything. Because when I went back to Spain and I got the job at Silicon, I was the only one in that, at that time that was working during the summer that knew a little bit of English to come to the US.
Yeah.
So that really is like, oh, okay, I mean, I didn't speak very good English, but that gave me the opportunity to come to the US here for the first time.
Wow. I don't see dishwasher on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it is not.
That's fascinating. So the misery of the 6 months in the UK gave you the opportunity. It opened the door for you eventually because you had chosen an experience that was both uncomfortable and different enough that it carved a unique opportunity, a unique skill out for you. Yeah. I find that certainly very few in the younger part of life put themselves in situations that force them to be uncomfortable, right?
And I love that stuff. I seek that all the time.
I know you do. Yeah.
That's what I did. Rock climbing.
Yeah.
Something that you might not know is that I paraglide as well. I got my pilot's license. I used to paraglide. I'm not paragliding anymore, but I used to as well.
What about climbing speaks to you as an entrepreneur?
Climbing is a problem-solving game. It's awesome. It's like it makes you focus on one thing, and you're just right in the moment, living the moment to the extreme. There's nothing like the fear of falling and dying. Honestly, that's really there's nothing like it.
Yeah,
I'm hooked to it because I don't think I would change that.
James, is there a sport that you engage in?
Yeah, I'm very seasonal. So I'm up in Seattle, right?
Yeah.
And so in the summers, obviously there's hiking and just getting out there. I do a lot of kayaking as well, just on the sea right there. But in the winter, I do a lot of split boarding.
Split boarding, will you explain what that is for folks that don't know?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm too cheap for a lift ticket.
Yeah.
So what you do, are you familiar with alpine touring?
Yep.
So you put skins on the underside of your skis, and those skins are kind of these fiberglass hairs that are pointed one way. And so you can move up the mountain, but it holds you from sliding back.
Right.
So those are skins.
Yep.
And that's, typically how you would climb a mountain that way.
Sure.
I'm still bad at skiing. So, but I'm a pretty good snowboarder.
Yeah.
So split boarding is exactly that, the alpine touring up.
Yep.
You take the bindings off, clip the skis together, form a snowboard, and then ride down.
It's basically a snowboard that splits into skis.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Fascinating.
Yeah. And so just kind of like the gadgetry around that and like really dialing in your setup, and like knowing it really well, kind of harkens back to kind of, Zen and the art of motorcycle maintenance.
Yep.
Of just like really being in tuned with your gear and like being present in the moment, like David was saying.
Yeah.
Just like really dialing in, being focused and challenging yourself at the same time.
How have you thought about now as entrepreneurs stepping away from a company where actually, let's talk about the culture of CEA, because I want to go into culture setting. One of the things that everybody who knows Andy and CEA knows is that CEA has become wildly successful, sold to Intertech, built a big business, was one of the early visionaries to leverage location and insight into sort of where the industry was going to capitalize on quality assurance, right? But Andy also invested heavily in coaching, invested heavily in the team, and was very specific and explicit about culture. Can you talk about the process that you guys have gone through, and maybe there were some things that you brought some elements from sort of experiencing other companies, but the process that you've gone through of thinking deeply about the culture you want in this company that has been your baby and that has been small, and you're now starting to hire people that you admire, and you're getting contracts from companies that you admire, and you want folks to be able to speak about your company in a certain way, to interact with your company in a certain way. You want your employees to talk about what you do in a specific way. I'd love to hear your thoughts on what culture means and how you go about setting culture inside that company.
Yeah, so we had the opportunity to be very close to Andy. That was a amazing experience. On seeing that change, I was part of the early CEA times.
And the angry Andy times.
I know the angry Andy as well, but I saw the transformation, and it was amazing. I was part of the room, like sitting there and kind of putting Post-its on the wall. How we came up with the values at CEA.
Right.
That made everyone feel part of it. It was not Andy. It was everyone in the room. Everyone coming up with
buy-in,
And that I saw what that did for CA and and in general, like it was a great experience, and we took a lot of lessons learned from that. Culture is key. You want to be surrounded with people you like. I mean, we make a priority. We both enjoy the outdoors. Right. For us, it's extremely important that you care about nature. You care about being outside, and you kind of work on something that is meaningful to you. So culture is something that we value a lot, and we take it into consideration. It's part of the process for interviewing and kind of hiring process.
James, do you have a sense of memorization of the values of the company? Is that a level that you guys have instituted this cultural ideal?
Yeah, at HelioVolta. Yeah. And so
no, I want you to tell me the CEA values.
Probably could. So, right. Yeah. Not to that level, but we did, it was really important that we put the ideas down on paper. And so in the employee handbook, it's 4 pages long, and it's a fun document. You're actually defining what our culture is. Why does HelioVolta exist? How does HelioVolta exist? And so we've talked about a lot of these already.
Can you tell me, why does HelioVolta exist?
Yeah, to ensure that I feel like I'm like the CEA grilled right now. But no, HelioVolta exists to ensure the reliability of renewable energy assets and that they fulfill their promise for future generations.
How does HelioVolta exist?
How does HelioVolta exist is by being really mindful and working with all of our clients. Taking a really constructive approach and never dictating issues, but always having a conversation, so that as conflicts arise, as they will, you're coming at it from a point of empathy, of like wanting to get to a common ground that's profitable for everyone. We talk a lot about conflict management and really defining and understanding the difference between interests and positions. And a lot of people have a lot of different interests that they want. An EPC might need to hit this cost hurdle. They might need to hit this thing. Whereas the owner, it needs quality. They need to hit this price and all this stuff. And they might have slightly different positions, but they can align on those issues. And so working with teams is really important at our core. And so fundamentally, we're also hiring people and defining that. When we go to a project site and we find deficiencies, we're not asking people to fix it because I told you so.
Right.
It's, we need to correct this because X, Y, and Z. And that's how we align on the same interest of a reliable project.
Yeah. David, if you stripped everything out to one core value, what do you think that would be for HelioVolta?
I think proactivity. I think being very proactive and communicative with our clients. I think that's one of the ones that
I know that you both value fun. You mentioned fun being part of a 4-page culture document. How do you ensure, as your team continues to grow, that it is a culture of fun, where fun is actually something that's embodied in it?
I think keeping things flexible, understanding people's lives. We're going to spend a lot of time together at work. You really need to kind of care a little bit more and really work with everyone, and doing fun activities just whole hands meeting. I think I learned that from CA as well. It's that's vital to build a culture. It's great to see each other in person, hang out, and do fun stuff. But again, always with the foundation that we have similar, values, right? You have to have the values to really kind of build upon them.
I know you worked just the two of you with some contractors for a long time, and that's the nature of so many entrepreneurial ventures today. I would say undercapitalized and overworked entrepreneurs that fear or like in some cases, and I would say in my case, like fear the idea of going out and trying to raise money around a business that can get to the point that it can fund itself, right? I'd love to hear you guys just give commentary around the journey of getting to revenue positive position and the points along the way where you realized that you either needed to afford to hire someone or you could afford to hire someone, and how you made those team addition choices, right? So getting to revenue is one stage, and then hiring people around that revenue is another stage.
Yeah. We have been doing from the beginning, we were very mindful about that. So we put ourselves to work just to do random stuff. We did completely random stuff.
So
just
consulting,
to be able,
just sort of
consulting, but everything. Like, you could ask me for whatever, and we'll do it.
Yeah.
And that was okay just to get us going and really set up things.
Yep.
Then the American Made Challenge prize was incredible timing because it was in chunks. So we got the first round was $30,000 if I recall correctly, and then the second round was $60,000, and then the final prize was $250,000, and that was very timely.
Is it true you got a check for it?
No, it was we got a big check right there.
A big check, like an Ed McMahon style check.
Yes.
Do you have it?
Yeah.
No way. Can we see it?
You want to see it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would love to see it. I remember you telling me that you had this check. This is amazing. Yeah. I'll hold it. I'm going to hold this with James. Look at Can you see this? Jeremy, can you see this? SolarGrade 200,000.
I have this great photo of like trying to remote deposit it on my phone. It wouldn't take it.
Yeah. Did you try to scan it through the?
Exactly. Just on the phone.
Here, this is amazing. I would totally keep that forever. That's amazing. So that process, David, as you come back, that process of going through the American Made Challenge, which your CEA buddy, Paul Wormser, had encouraged you all to take that step, gave you some dry powder, right? It gave you the capacity to do more than just what your savings could accomplish.
Yeah, definitely. And that just generated a snowball effect. Okay, we have a little bit of money. We can do more work. We can get the MVP to the next step. That next step gets you to the first contract. The first contract gets you to some revenue. We got very lucky as well with prepaid revenue on our platform. That really helps.
So prior to the Solar Prize, you were pre-revenue.
No, we had a little bit of revenue before the prize.
Okay.
For sure. We signed the first big contract right before the prize. That was one of the reasons why they gave us kind of the final prize.
Oh, cool. Well, I was wondering, because the two of you had diverse but utility-focused careers, it seemed from the outside looking in like you had the perfect network. Did it feel like you had the right people in the right places from the beginning, or how did that start to take shape? Maybe talk a bit about the process of external advice. You mentioned Paul Grana, but did you feel like your network accelerated your ability to get to revenue, to get to product fit, those kinds of things?
Yeah, I wouldn't have like enough time to thank everyone that has been. It's been amazing. The community. Everyone that you feel really that people are cheering up for you.
Yeah.
And that has been great. I mean, we had a lot of people helping out and a lot of, colleagues from the industry, ex-co-workers, people that we know, just cheering you up and saying, yeah, you can do it. Let me give you an intro. Let me, introduce you to that person, the other person. And that has been literally everything. Like we could have not do it without it.
Are there any anecdotes that come to mind of like, wow, I remember this moment where this person in our network, either you asked for advice and it was exactly what you needed, or somebody came unexpectedly from a past sort of a past life, maybe CEA or EDF or otherwise, that that catalyzed or maybe mobilized opportunity?
Yeah, one that I remember, Key Miller. He used to, work with
Key,
us.
yeah,
He
yeah.
worked with us at CA as well. Kind of build a good
Yeah,
relationship.
and was at Sun Edison.
And then he worked with me before at Sun Edison, and he worked at Longi after that. I remember setting up a call with him just as friends. He's like, "Hey, what are you guys doing? What are you working on?" And we were like, "Okay, I think we got the MVP. Let us give you a demo."
Right.
And we got on a call, start giving him a demo, and he completely like tells us, "Okay, stop the demo," and he starts just going straight to the business. Like,
Yeah.
how are you guys? Okay, this is working. Like, clearly this is gonna work. Like,
Right.
he was very clear
Oh,
that the
wow.
product was gonna work. He's like, now have you thought about the business?
Right.
And I'm like, oh, we really haven't. Like, we're just building this cool thing.
Yeah.
And that was super interesting. So he's been also super helpful along the process.
That's amazing. How big has the team grown in the last year or so?
We are around 15 people.
Wow.
On contractors as well.
Yep.
Outside of that.
Yeah.
So quite a lot.
What's the most recent hire?
We just hired a couple of people that started in January 1st, a VP of operations on a account executive, our first salesperson.
Sales.
I'm so excited.
Wow. David's division gets to grow.
Yeah. Tiffany Chapples is awesome. She comes from, the software world with a lot of experience with SaaS companies.
But not from solar.
Not from solar. No. Zero solar, but she's going to learn everything about it.
Do it.
She's already been on a project site. Yeah. She's already been on a project site with us.
That's
so
awesome.
That's good. Just kind of
That's amazing.
Jumping in. She's great.
Yeah. You can do it. You can hire people that don't have solar experience. Oh, and that are not male or white. I digress. Kudos. Is there any were there any hiring challenges or maybe hiring missteps that you made along the way that you'd like to just discuss?
I think so far we've been very lucky. We take our time to hire the right people and go through a process probably more stringent than others. And it's all a lot like culture is a big factor.
Yeah. So getting that right was really critical.
That's really...
Is there anything that you look back on and you think, wow, that was either unnecessary or we did that too early?
Yeah, a lot of things. I mean, it's just a never-ending process. I think we did a lot of things that could have been done better from the sales perspective, not knowing and really undervaluing yourself initially. Like as a startup entrepreneur, you want to get your product out there. People like it when it comes to the moment to, negotiate pricing. It's like, okay, I'm not sure. You're not confident. You don't have reference points for how much it's worth. So you're testing the waters. Like, okay, is this worth to you? And we could have done much better from that perspective.
Do you feel like you started pricing too low?
Probably. And not having the right pricing strategy, not necessarily pricing too low. It's like not having the right pricing strategy. So we've been kind of working a lot on updating that.
Is there anything that you've changed your mind about?
So I think from a product perspective, we started in one direction and made some shifts that make the product more interesting. So SolarGrade started as this fieldwork management software where we're really trying to reduce labor costs significantly and increase quality, all this. And, that in itself is a great business model. There's a big need in the market, but we saw some changes and some challenges as we got out into the field and we're kind of trialing it out with different people.
Yeah.
And so one of those things was realizing that when we're doing that automated reporting, when we're doing this and that, you're effectively creating a new class of data.
Yeah.
And so we were on a rooftop one day and I was like, David, we're basically creating an analog to digital converter of the field teams and extending the data acquisition system with them. And so, you can really get that robust picture of an asset health by pairing, meter data with non-meter data, or that
Right.
fieldwork data
Yep.
by playing with that. And so that's really where the SolarFax idea came in. Yeah. So that's been pretty interesting.
That's fascinating. Do you remember when the idea that it was a solar fax came, like that, those words came into your thinking?
I think our buddy was like, "Oh, this is really cool. You're basically making the Carfax of solar."
Oh,
and
right
we're
on.
like, "Oh, SolarFax. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Play with that." Yeah.
You just got to tell enough people.
Yeah.
And then they'll tell you what your product is.
Yeah.
Right.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. We talk sometimes, and you mentioned Paul Grana and Folsom Labs and Helioscope. We talk sometimes about, as entrepreneurs, we have a million ideas, but you got to pick one. And oftentimes they'll say, like, pick one product, take it to $1 million before you think about any of the other things, right? You've created 2 brands, effectively 2 companies. You've created HelioVolta and SolarGrade. And SolarGrade is the product. It's the business where you've been leading this. Most of what we've talked about today is the product of SolarGrade, and that's the concept that got you the check from the Solar Prize. But as HelioVolta, 2 very bright engineers that are not stuck on just creating one product. I'd love to hear, you mentioned EL earlier, like what corners are you seeing in the industry that you're looking around? Where else does the application of your knowledge extend beyond SolarGrade?
Yeah, for us, we go about this back and forth with the name picking for SolarGrade.
Yeah.
Because in a way, from the beginning, we wanted to tackle the vertical of software for the solar industry. But then we got a bunch of, clients interested. It's like, hey, can I use this for wind? And I'm like, sure you can. Like, it's just, we need to create a few templates here, but it works for wind, and it will work for EV charging station, and it will work for
building houses.
Yeah, but for we're kind of looking more of the expansion within the energy transition sources. So storage, solar plus storage, wind, and EV charging stations.
Yeah,
that's where kind of we feel that could open up a big opportunity for us.
As we start to wrap up, I mean, the things that you and I most often talk about, which are not necessarily the solar industry related, it's kind of how we feed our minds. I love to dig in. I want to learn a bit more about your personal development, your personal productivity, when your off time is how you reframe your mind, right? I talked to someone today that said that mindset was the key thing that she had learned in the business, in the company where she was working, right? And I thought about how that has a ripple effect into our private lives, right? What I'm curious, and there's so many for you, that's why you don't get to go first. What do you nerd out about that's not energy related?
So I'm a really process-oriented person. Like Atomic Habits was a great book for me.
Yep.
And so part of that was building in a meditation practice.
Yeah.
And so that's how I start the day. And then when we have meetings that end at 1 a.m., I need to meditate again to shut my mind off.
Yeah. How long do you meditate?
Usually just 15 minutes at a time.
Yep.
Usually just 15 minutes at a time.
Do you use an app?
I do. Yeah. Headspace.
Yeah. Wow. Still on the Headspace. That's great. I mean, creature of habit right there.
Yeah.
I started on Headspace and recommend it to everyone. The Take 10, which is free, is in my opinion, the best introduction to meditation on the planet. There's a lot of great apps. I use Insight Timer, but I've paid for like full year of Headspace for friends who said, "Oh, I can't meditate." I'm like, that's because you haven't learned the proper way. Like, I promise you, try a Headspace for a year and you will become a meditator. Yeah. That's cool. Is there anything about meditation that, how do you share meditation with others?
Yeah. And so, they have these kind of community meditations, and I never really engaged with that.
No.
It's
personal.
Yeah. It's kind of it's part of like building that emotional intelligence of one of the things that I've really benefited from is noticing emotions rising in me and letting them, and recognizing them and letting them pass.
Yeah.
And so, so I'm not quick to react to something that might be really jarring to me.
Yeah.
And so effectively that's how I share it with people, is to kind of have that
That's cool.
more calm mindset.
David, how about yourself?
You know me, I nerd out about way too many things. I lately, I think I introduced you, or at least I spoke with you a lot
You
right at
introduced
the
me
beginning
to
with
my first million.
My first million.
Yeah.
But then we talk about AI a lot
Yes.
early on.
Mm-hmm.
DALL-E.
Yep. You
And,
definitely introduced me to DALL-E
and
Midjourney.
I played, but
David was sending me photos. I remember, I'll never forget that you sent me picture after picture after picture, and you're like, and you should do a picture for Solar Warriors, and you sent me like 20, and you sent me like retouched photos of you, and I was like, when did you do these? He's like, I was up until 4 a.m.
Yeah. So I when I nerd out, I go down the rabbit hole pretty deep.
Very deep, yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
And I always somehow find time for that stuff.
Yeah.
So it's
that gives you energy.
Incredible. Yeah. That gives me energy.
That feeds you, yeah.
That's.
And then how do you decompress?
Exercise.
Mm-hmm.
I have.
Does it have to be strenuous? Or just body moving?
It could be, a little bit of everything. I have to do something every day.
Yep.
So somehow I always find the time. Very, few cases that I skip that.
Yep. David is the only friend, and I have a lot of friends that climb. He's the only friend that sends me pictures of himself at the climbing gym, and I know, and it's in camaraderie because we've committed to go climbing.
We set up a goal.
Yeah, we did.
We did. Remember,
it was August of this past year. I failed miserably.
You failed miserably, but I sent you my photo of the goal accomplished. Yeah. It was climbing a 12B in the gym. And I send you the photo.
Yep. So I will get I commit to getting to an 11A and going, which I've been told, by the way, I don't need to get to 11A to go climb Red Rocks or Red River Gorge.
No, you don't need to.
But to keep up with him, I do. So for him to find it interesting. So I've started climbing outdoors as well. I'm going to try to figure out how we can chronicle this journey together of you like whipping me into shape to be a good climber.
We should do it.
I'm going to build a wall like this. This is impressive. You built this during the pandemic?
I had it already from my previous house.
You did?
I moved it.
Oh, fantastic.
And I built it extension over the roof during the pandemic, and I painted it.
Painted it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I love the sun on it, which we've got a good angle on that as well. And you both have young children. And how has building a company while also having toddlers changed your life?
That's crazy. I always think about how much easier would have been without kids.
Yeah.
And why I didn't do this when I had the opportunity.
Oh, God.
And
yes. Are you listening? Mm-hmm.
It's been literally, it's really hard. That's the hardest, kind of juggling everything.
I give people diametrically opposed advice. Your 20s is the absolute best time to try everything you ever wanted to try and fail. But also, it is the best time to go work for a big company and get taught how companies work so that you don't fuck up as much as we did when you start your own companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard. It's really hard. You introduced me to a lot of books and podcasts, so I won't let you go first. How do you feed your mind?
It is a lot of books. I thought about going to grad school and, really learning how to do business and like build a business and all this stuff. Mm-hmm. And a mentor of mine, Rick Brown, who started Terra Verde,
Rick?
Yeah, really, he's on the Holden board of directors with me. And, I was talking to him and he was like, you can go to get an MBA, pay a bunch of money, and they'll tell you what you did wrong.
Yeah.
Or you can just go do it. And so part of reading a lot is kind of that fulfillment of a promise to myself of just like constantly engaging.
Yeah. Continuous improvement.
Exactly. So a lot of those books are business based.
Okay.
A lot of it's AI. And so that's something I nerd out about a lot.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular, having gone through the process of reading numerous books on AI, that stands out to you? Like help somebody else jump to the front of the line?
Yeah. No, I think a really good book for a way into it is just The History of AI.
It's called The History of AI.
The History of AI.
Yeah. Sounds really riveting.
Yeah.
I think-
No, exactly.
I
Like,
have an idea
the-
for you. ChatGPT will summarize it.
That's real. Yeah, so you would think so, but he actually takes it in a pretty good narrative
Okay.
form. That, and in the preface of it, he was like, I was telling my PhD colleagues that I'm going to do it, and everybody's making fun of it. But it was actually a really good read, and I learned a lot about it. Because similar, like David and I are not
remember the author?
hardcore. I'm blanking on it,
No,
but
we'll
he's
find
from
it. Yeah, we'll find it and put it in the show.
Yeah,
He's from where?
Oxford.
Oxford. Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, it's super helpful intro into that space.
Yep.
And just kind of getting into it. And so we were talking about David and I are not hardcore coders, but we understand the architecture and like what needs to go into it.
Yep.
And so I think it gives somebody interested in AI that framework of like, you might not be the AI engineer or whatever,
right.
but you have the background and how it built up from Alan Turing to what it is now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Are there any podcasts that are go-to podcasts for you?
Obviously, SunCast.
Everybody
Listen
says
every day. Obviously. No, I mean, I really like everything that Canary Media is putting out to Catalyst. I listen to that a lot.
Fantastic.
And then I probably listen to the same stuff that you do because David pushes it to me.
Right.
And then I mean, just like new stuff and whatnot. No, it's good.
Okay, it's your turn. Books and podcasts.
I'm gonna be just the biggest one is a huge shout out to the How to Take Over the World.
Oh, that's so good. You turned me onto that one. I had never heard of it. Yeah,
good.
Producer Ben.
if you wanna start with an episode on that, listen to Thomas Edison's life.
Yeah, so good.
Incredible. I just listened to the Wright brothers.
Yes.
Got me down the rabbit hole for the Wright.
Yes, I took my kids to
Dayton.
No, not to Dayton. To the Outer Banks.
Oh,
to Kitty Hawk.
they have Kitty Hawk. Yeah,
I have a picture of my son flying a kite at the place where the Wright brothers
incredible.
live.
Story. Yeah. So
How to Take Over the World is a fantastic podcast done by the producer Ben Wilson of our other Bromance podcast.
Yeah, my first million, which is about business and kind of business ideas.
I think if we could ever start a podcast that would emulate another podcast, it would be
my first million.
My first million for clean energy. Yeah.
Yeah. No,
if you'd like us to do that, just leave us a note on LinkedIn.
What else? Books for fun. I read a lot of business books of the stuff that I want to learn about.
Yeah.
So that not super interesting. I mean, interesting, but not interesting to share. I think the most interesting or fun book that I read that had nothing to do with business is American Kingpin.
American Kingpin.
Incredible.
Who's it about?
Albert Alcombright is the guy that set up the Silk Road, that website that you can buy anything.
Yep.
Oh, so good. That book, I finished it within a week. It was so just amazing. Yeah. Really good story.
Do either of you have specific routines that are anchors for you, or even that you sort of know that it's so routine that you joke with one another about it, but it's a core to who you are and how you operate?
I think for me it's exercise. It's just I have to do something and I have to fit it somewhere. So whether that's early in the morning, late, I don't have a schedules.
Yeah.
It's just whenever I see. Yeah.
Did you exercise today?
Today, not yet, because we're gonna go rock climbing and we are gonna skip it.
I think we're gonna skip it.
Yeah, no, I mean the same thing. I was mentioning habit stacking earlier.
Yeah.
That's really a pretty big part of it. But exercising in the morning has been really helpful because that's a time that I can kind of have agency over. And so waking up really early and getting out there and even if it's just a few miles, just doing it.
Running.
Yeah.
That's your go-to.
It's a really good reset. And it also helps me wake up a lot better. And I'm on that train of waiting an hour and a half before having caffeine to more naturally wake up.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
I found that to be super, super helpful.
Yeah. The other podcast where I learned that I should be waiting 90 minutes was Andrew Huberman. Huberman Lab. Oh my God, it's so good. Have you been listening to Huberman Lab?
I do.
Yeah. Andrew Huberman, he's a neuroscientist from Stanford, and he is brilliant. His podcast blew up in the last 2 years, just one of the biggest podcasts, but talks about the science of how the chemical impact of both caffeine and alcohol and lots of other things. And one of the things that he says is that you should wait 60, at minimum 60, but up to 90 minutes.
Reminds me to the Peter Attia book, Outlive, which I recently read.
Did you read that?
Yeah, it's good. I read that one on Lifespan.
Lifespan.
David
Sinclair. Yeah, the podcast is great.
Really good. I'm into a lot of like longevity and health.
Yeah. I've heard very good things about Peter Attia's book. Yeah,
he's really good. Actually, you understand why he's kind of angry as a person.
Yeah.
Everyone likes Andrew Huberman and not so much Peter Attia.
Yeah.
Once you kind of understand his story, it's pretty deep.
Yeah. Well, we've gotten a chance to go deeper into you guys' story. And if I know that there's more than one out there who will want to reach out, what's the best way for them to connect with you guys?
Via email, david@heliovolta.com.
Such an engineer.
Yeah, same. Or LinkedIn works too. Yeah. James at HelioVolta. But LinkedIn, we're pretty active there.
Yeah. It's so funny. All the engineers share their emails. Everybody else shares they just say on LinkedIn and we link to it.
Oh, really?
It's great though. I love it.
Pretty easy to guess ours.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, we will certainly link to ways that folks can engage with you all and the myriad of resources that you've shared here. As we wrap, though, if you think about, we've been in this industry now for David and I, nearly 20 years, you like right at 20 years. We're starting to see the first fruits. We're starting to see sort of folks saying, oh, we can achieve something that looks like an 80 or 100% renewable grid or a decarbonized grid by 2030, 2040. In fact, we have commitments now after COP28 to 2050. Let's just look at what I consider worst case scenario is that we meet the COP goal by 2050. What are a couple of the things that we got right to achieve that goal?
I think currently a lot of the teams that are actually building these systems are super undervalued.
Yeah.
And so I think in 2050, we're looking back and we're saying we were really able to unlock those teams to build projects better, faster.
Okay.
So we can actually deploy solutions much, much faster. And then when you do that more effectively and gather a lot of data, then you can figure out your mistakes a lot faster.
Yeah.
Machine learning, once you've structured the data, you can figure out why did this happen?
Yep.
Where's that underperformance coming from in a way that we couldn't before?
Yeah. By 2050, robots will be building them.
I don't know. So I have a lot of thoughts about that.
Yeah, okay.
So nerding out about AI, some of the things that AI can't replace are complex decision making in like a very context specific environment.
Yeah.
And fine motor skills. So you're always going to need a plumber, you're always going to need an electrician. And so the fine motor skills there is obvious, but the complex decision making of having that field tech on site that can really dial in and think about what is the actual problem here? How do I diagnose this? Because AI will always struggle with input overload.
Right.
Like how does it dial in to like really focus on this specific thing? So that's why, field teams like really valuing what they bring, unlock.
You just gave me a new question. What's the most undervalued asset in your business or the industry today? That's cool. Field teams. David?
What was the question?
Such a sales guy. Looking back on 2050, how did we get it right? What did we get right? And what were the most undervalued assets that helped us get there?
How do we get it right? I think we'll look back and we will know we got it right because we are executing on it. And I think pulling the trigger on moving forward on renewables is a no-brainer. It just makes sense. A lot of things have to happen, as Jim is pointing out, but I think it's a mix of. It's difficult to kind of pick a specific one.
Yeah,
but
I put you on the spot. It's okay. We can just go with James's answer.
Yeah, I don't know what to say. What to add to that?
It's perfectly okay. You've chosen a great partner.
Yeah. What was the second part of the question?
If there are any particularly undervalued assets in the industry that you have discovered in this process.
I mean, for us, is again, not repeating James, but for us, it's kind of data and field data as a new layer of data that we haven't been using that has a lot of the answers to some of the problems that we're seeing.
I hope that we can repurpose some of the laughter at the end of the interview to the beginning, so that people will watch all the way through. If you've watched all the way through, thank you so much. David Peñalva and James Nagel are the co-founders of HelioVolta and the creators of SolarGrade, and I am so looking forward to seeing how you guys continue to build this business.
Thank you, Nico.
Thanks so much.
So if you have made it this far, I want to thank you as well for paying attention to what I consider to be a deep interview with guys who have, in fact, been on the front lines of the clean energy transition and are creating tools to help accelerate that energy transition. As David and James just enunciated, there are material ways that we can improve the processes and the grade of product that we are putting out into the world. I hope that you've listened this far because you are trying to up-level your own skills, your own business, your career. You're in the right place. In SunCast, we've done more than 650 such episodes with leaders like James and David on the front lines of the clean energy transition. You can find all of them in mysuncast.com or right in the back catalog in the podcast player or here on YouTube where you are watching. If you have any questions, ideas, people that you think we should be interviewing, please put them in the comments or reach out to me on LinkedIn, of course, or Nico at mysuncast.com. I do love to answer those. Or fill out our customer survey. Leave us all the information that you would like to see for how we can make this show better for you. I promise we do listen. David is an example of someone who has reached out and said, Nico, you should stop doing this, you should start doing that. You are recipients of the first fruits of that as we are evolving the show and trying to be more entertaining, trying to be video forward. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to our sponsors who help make this show possible each and every week. So the only thing you have to pay is your time and attention. It is so valuable to us. I want to thank those sponsors for helping support this show. You can find out more about them at mysuncast.com/sponsor. That's also how you can learn ways to partner with us to reach thousands of solar warriors and clean tech champions twice a week, just like they do. Remember, you are what you listen to. Thanks again for showing up, Solar Warrior. It's half the battle.